business owners who have shared somewhat personal relationship with the employees, who have been loyal to their service in the business for years or even decades? How should the line between empathy and leadership be drawn?
That's a good question. As I mentioned in my talk, when you decide, it is based on 2 or 3 things. One, you decide based on P&L, right? An impacted balance sheet, your profit and loss. Number 2, kasi kung talagang masikip na, mahirap na, wag na ipilit, di ba? And I think you know that
Yes.
from your experience, Joey. Number 2, it should always be based on the values that you and the family have shared to the employee. Permanently. The other one is redundancy. Redundancy, you also say goodbye permanently, but the premise here, pag redundancy, may pangpalit ka na robot sa kanya.
Automation.
That's why you have to pay them higher. Right? 1 month for every year of service. Sa retrenchment, half month. Third, may option ka pa. Kung medyo mahirap na talaga, you can prepare and do a floating arrangement. Right? Ang sa Amerika, tawag nila dyan, furlough, di ba?
Yes.
Ano ibig sabihin ng floating arrangement? No work, no pay. But under the law, you have 6 months to make sure that after 6 months, you have to let them come back. And they continue to be employees. So at least meron kang breather.
Yes.
No? So yun lang yung options nun. But impacted cash flow and the values that will cover whatever decisions you make.
Okay. Thank you, Professor
Thank
Eric
you,
Soriano,
Joey.
for the time. And for the questions na marami pa na hindi ako pwedeng mabasa, but we have a very limited time asking Professor Eric Soriano. But the good news is, marami siyang mga upcoming event and online event that you could join. You can replay the video, so you know the schedule of Professor Eric Soriano.
Ay, Joey, meron pala akong isang good news. Nakalimutan ko. Sabi ko kanina, bibigyan ko ng JCI members ng free business plan template.
Wow.
Hindi lang na-flash sa screen, pero pwede nyo ho tignan yung website ng opisina ko. Ang website is wbadvisoryasia.com. There is a 19-page business plan template that Richard used when he did his business continuity plan. It's for free. It's my advocacy, and it's my help, one way or the other, to at least help the JCI members all over the Philippines.
Thank you for that, Professor Eric. If you want to become a certified SOB, son of a businessman, hindi yung isa, like Richard, of course, ako na lang, sige. We would like to award the Certificate of Appreciation to Professor Enrique Soriano for imparting his valuable insights and inspiration to our community during the JCIdeas Outlook on Resiliency Beyond New Normal, given this 28th day of August 2020. So we have to stand up at Microtel Mall of Asia, Manila, signed by the National Chairperson of JCI Makati, Mr. Lawrence Bitan, of course, signed by National President of JCI Philippines, NP Mark Joseph David.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maraming salamat. We shall go on. Thank you very much, Professor Eric Soriano, once again for the very enlightening presentation for JCIdeas. And thank you for all the questions that you given us. Okay? Position pa.
by far the largest component of the residential property market in the Philippines. Our units are small, they're not very large, but that's how we keep them affordable. But while our units are small, they are complete. They have the bedroom, the bathroom, living room, dining room, kitchen, complete. But we keep them small to keep them affordable. However, we compensate for that by having a very large hotel-like lobbies, interior designed, very comfortable, air-conditioned, strong Wi-Fi, very comfortable sofas. And then when you go out to the amenities, it's also very generous. We have them designed by both local and foreign landscape artists. Resort-styled amenities, large swimming pools, lush gardens, function rooms, playground, gym, the works, everything. So that if you don't want to stay in your unit, you just go down and then you have a very big living room, which is the lobby, and you have very nice amenities. Another part of our trademark is that our developments offer convenience. Our developments are always next to an SM mall, or next to a school, or next to a transportation hub. So it's very convenient for the residents. In all of our developments, we also have a commercial strip where we have the basic necessities that you would look for. Grocery, you can do your grocery. I've been okay. I've been asked to discuss today how a company can survive in this current crisis. Now, I'm not a management guru, and I will not pretend to be one. But then, what I can do is to discuss how SNDC is coping with the crisis. Just like your companies, we had to close our offices during the lockdown. We had to close down for 3 months from March. We all had to stay they set up their web pages. We provided them funding to boost their websites so that they will be able to capture a larger audience. Our back gave them pocket Wi-Fi, and then we gave them access to the system of the office in the office. So it's like they were in the office. Our executives also continue to manage. They use Zoom, they use Viber. We meet every day. As a matter of fact, we were even working harder at home than the office because there our sales was higher than the same period last year. We were lucky, but then we were also prepared. So now the pandemic is still here. We're only beginning to feel the results now. Many companies have started to realize that they cannot retain their current manpower. And a survey by SWS a couple of weeks ago showed that 46% of the people they talked to, they surveyed, have lost their jobs. About half of that, they lost their jobs only in the last couple of months. So what should we do? I can tell you how SNDC dealt with it. Basically, there are many areas you should look into, depending on your nature of business. But in the case of, in our case, there are three factors that we focused on. There is no other time other than during a crisis where this holds true. It's very important to have cash because you need to, cash is the only way that you can keep it operating. If you don't have cash, you won't be able to pay your employees. Your employees will stop working, and then you'll have to close shop. If SMDC stop paying our sellers their commissions and their incentives and their allowances, they'll stop selling, then we'll have even less cash. You need cash to pay your suppliers, to pay for your raw materials. If we SMDC start paying our suppliers of our construction materials and our contractors, they will stop constructing our buildings, and then we will we will not be able to deliver our commitments to the buyers. We need cash to pay for utilities, of course, electricity, water, internet. You need cash to keep your bankers happy. You have to keep your loans current. Otherwise, your bankers will cut off your lifeline, which is your cash line. So you'd ask yourself, how do I conserve cash? A lot of it is common sense, really. Of course, you have to defer unnecessary expenses. What would this be? These are the ones that are not critical to your survival now. Like, for example, software upgrades, purchasing new equipment, maybe hiring external consultants to study your process, company outings. I don't want to break the bad news to you, but your Christmas party for this year, your company Christmas party, that's canceled. You need to have an aggressive collection team. Remember that your debtor, your accounts receivable, you need to liquidate it, convert it from accounts receivable to cash. So you need to have your whoever owes you money through the business pay you, prioritize you in payments. You need to have an aggressive collection team, because remember that everybody will be trying to conserve cash. So everybody will be going after the same debtors. So only those who knock the door or bang on the door hardest will get paid. I think that's how the banks work. You have to offer incentives and discounts. Your buyers or the ones who need to pay you money, you need to incentivize them to pay you earlier. Give you an example. In the case of the property developers, when the lockdown happened in March, our regulators, the Human Settlements, Department of Human Settlements and Urban Development, gave a directive that said that developers should not collect from our buyers the monthly amortizations or the payments for about 3 months. There was a moratorium. So we had no choice. All of a sudden, our source of cash stopped. So we wrote to the buyers and told them, okay, there's a directive, you don't have to pay your monthly. However, if you pay voluntarily, if you choose to pay, we'll give you a discount. So as a result, our cash flow continued to come in, and we continue to get our cash. So that's what I mean by example of giving incentives and discounts. You have to keep sales flowing. In the case of SMDC, our sales is dependent on, of course, the amount of inventory that we have, the condominium units, and our sales force. In terms of inventory, the thing was that during the lockdown, we kept on selling, as I mentioned, we kept on selling, and our inventory was dwindling. Our problem was that, well, it's good in that we will continue to sell. The problem is that it was difficult to replenish because the government offices who needed to approve our licenses were closed as well. So we couldn't replenish it. So the moment the Metro Manila shifted to GCQ, some government offices operated skeleton force. We had our people camp outside the government offices and get our permits. That's the kind of commitment you need to do to be able to make sure that that you get your cash flow going. Talagang you do what you have to do. If you have to have your people stay in the government office to get the permits, you should do it. In terms of sales force, what we did was that in terms of the sales, what we did was, of course, we had to offer our buyers discounts to keep on buying from us. We offered our sellers more commissions. As I mentioned, we did quite well in the first half in terms of our sales, so it seems to have worked. Finally, you have to protect your relationship with the bankers. You have to make sure that your loans are current, and that the bankers continue to be confident. You give them all the information you need, because if they stop lending to you, they'll cut your lifeline, which is cash. Then you'll close down. Okay. One thing that, before I end on cash, I just want to say that for those of you who are not accountants, do not confuse profits with cash flow. Those who are accountants know this, but those who are not, your financial statements may show that you have a lot of profits. But when you look at your bank statement, baka walang laman. Kasi your profits could be stuck in other assets like accounts receivable and inventory. You cannot pay your employees with accounts receivable. They cannot use that to buy their food. Baka iba to sa inyo yun. You won't be able to survive if you don't have cash. So always follow the guidelines I gave you to conserve your cash. Focus less on your profit. Right now, you can sacrifice a little margin just as long as you have cash. The next item that you should look out for is the manpower. In many companies, manpower accounts for a very big part of their expenses. Understandably so, because manpower is your most important asset. However, in times of a crisis, you need to review your manpower. You need to identify your core employees. These are the people who will get you through this crisis. There's a book called Good to Great, written by Jim Collins. Jim Collins likens a company to a bus, yung bus. He said that before a company embarks crisis, these are the people that you can trust. These are the people who have the right attitude. They're self-starters. They're very positive. They have passion. You don't have to motivate them because they're self-motivated. Those who will get off the bus, conversely, those who get off the bus are the ones who are negative, who are not team players. These are the ones who are not the right fit. But you have to make a decision on who stays in the bus with you and who gets off the bus. Now you'd say, okay, how do I decide who stays and who gets off the bus? Jim Collins is saying, this is how you do it. You think about the employee or look at the employee, and then you ask yourself one question. You say, if this employee were to resign today, will I just let him go? Or will I fight tooth and nail to keep him? Give him incentives, give him more money, laban, just to keep him. When you answer that question, you'd know immediately who you would want to stay in the bus and who you won't mind if they get off the bus. Ensure correct manpower mix. Nandiyan na, nasa bus na, everybody, you've chosen the people who stay with you to get through this crisis. The next thing you'd think about is that you have to know which seats in the bus to put them. It depends on their level of skills, on their leadership, and their expertise, so that you know you have to put them, you need the right mix. So it's basically what you need to do in a crisis. Now, going back to the SWS survey where 46% of the people lost their jobs. Cost cutting had a lot to do with that. But then in going through the cost cutting, they went through this exercise that I talked to you about. You really need to find out who your core team is, so that these are the people who will help you to strategize and execute your strategy to get through this crisis. The third, let me go to the business strategy. This is the third item that you need to look into. You have a business model that you've been following all these years. All of a sudden, you have a crisis, this crisis. And in this crisis, there have been a lot of new trends that have come up. Work from home, you hear about work from home, you hear about social distancing. Online shopping has become very popular. Another trend that's important is that a lot of people, of course, lost their jobs, so their cash flow is impaired. So there's less money going around. You always hear the term the new normal. You need to study all of these trends, look at your strategy, and adapt to the trends of the times. So I'll give you a couple of examples to how SM managed through this, or did this exercise. SMDC saw the trend of work from home. So, di ba, I mentioned earlier that our products are small condominium units, functional. It has everything. It has the bedroom, the living room, the dining room, etc. However, we realized that companies will now, they've already experienced work from home. They realize that they can still be productive working from home. We feel that a lot of companies will introduce this as part of their regular way of doing business. Maybe part of the operations, they'll do work from home. In the States, it's been a practice a long time. But in the Philippines, it's going to be more of a practice because they save on rental income, and of course, the employees save on transportation costs. So kami naman, adjusting our product to this, we're designing our condominium units to have a workstation. So you have a place here to put your desk, good lighting. We're providing very strong Wi-Fi, commercial grade, para they have the same kind of level of Wi-Fi that they would get in the office. We have our standard, our trademark of having commercial strips in our residential developments fits well with work from home because you don't have to leave the complex, and you can get your groceries, and you can get you can do your banking, you can go get all your services just within the complex. So we are adjusting to this work from home concept. Even our common areas, we are creating co-working spaces in our common areas for people who don't want to stay in their unit to do the work from home. They can do in the common area. At least there will be other people. So that's an example of how we're adjusting to that trend. We also realized that, as I mentioned, another trend is that cash flow or the incomes of people have been impaired. So SMDC is developing a new product line. I mentioned that our product is affordable housing, but this affordable is high-rise and medium-rise condominiums. But then we're creating an even more affordable product to address this trend of lower income. So our market will need a product they can afford. Gagawa kami ng low-rise. Low-rise, just mga 4 floors lang, with toned down amenities, still complete, still good quality, but then the cost is lower than our current product offerings to address this new market where people have less spending power. So that's an idea of how we're adjusting. Another trend I want to talk about is the popularity of online shopping. Millennials are used to this. Millennials are very used to the internet. So this is not too new to them. But then during this lockdown, the older generation, they may have heard online shopping, but a lot of them have not tried it. They're forced to try it during the lockdown because number one, they had plenty of time in their hands, and number two, they still needed to buy whatever it is that they wanted to buy, but they couldn't go out. So they experimented in online shopping, Lazada and Amazon, and many of them got hooked. And I don't think they're going to go back. Remember that these people have deeper wallets than the millennials. So that there's a lot of money now that will go into online shopping here in the Philippines because the older generation who have the financial capacity will now start using it more extensively. So that's good for the online retailers. That's bad news for the retailers who have their own brick and mortar, their own shops. So that in the case of SM, they created their own shop SM, which is gaining traction. You really just have to make sure that you adjust to the trend. Now, we have 76 malls. SM has 76 malls all over the Philippines. Actually, it could be 77. I've lost track because they seem to get one every month, 1 or 2 every month. So we have a lot of malls. Now, we feel that our malls will be it'll be a permanent fixture. It's not going to go away. In the Philippines, the malls here are like parks in other countries. We don't have parks. So that malls is where the families go to bond on weekends. Very comfortable environment, air conditioned, and then protection from the rain and the sun. People always go to malls. So we're not worried. After this pandemic is over, tingin mo, puno na naman. Hirap na naman maghanap ng parking. But what the SM malls realized because of the trend of online shopping is that we need to change the mix of the tenants. Of course, you still have the usual tenants, clothes and so on, but then you'll need more of the things that you cannot get online. Like, of course, food. So we have more restaurants, we have more activities like bowling, ice skating, golf putting, other services like salon and spa, even your nails, even government services, renewal of your driver's license or your passports. So that's how the malls are now adjusting to deal with the new trend of online shopping. Another example is adjustment is social distancing. Sarado lahat ng cinemas, di ba? So that what SM did was that they experimented on the drive-in cinema. SM Pampanga earlier this month tried the drive-in cinema where you go there with your car, you don't get off your car, there's a big screen, and then you watch from your car. It's an old concept, actually 1950s pa, but now it's very appropriate. It was so successful, the one in Pampanga, that they had to turn away customers. So this is probably going to be something that's going to, we'll probably have more of this. So to summarize, you have to study the trend and you have to adapt. That basic, I want to just to reiterate the points that you need to look into. Or what we did just to survive this crisis, we looked at our cash, we made sure that we had the right manpower, and we looked at the trends and adjusted our strategy. So I hope you picked up something from my little talk today. Thank you very much for listening, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
For a short discussion. Okay. Magte-thank you pa lang ang Edron.
Oh. Diba?
Hirap siya pag walang audio. Hirap pag... Thank you very much for that very informative talk, Mr. Banson. Now we would like to invite you for a short Q&A. Have it, sir.
Thank you.
Very timely, sir, yung diniscuss mo, recovering what's lost, now, especially coming from the CEO of SMDC. So we've got a lot of insights again, especially about cash, strategy, and yung team na kailangan talaga. You mentioned about the strategy of the mall and of the development side. I myself, sir, I have a property in SM Shell.
Oh,
C,
really? Okay.
and Shore. Nakumpleto ko yung C, Shell, Shore. So it's a good investment because we're enjoying the property. Also, I'm into a restaurant business.
Okay.
So 80% of my branches are all in SM.
In the malls.
So
okay.
Unfortunately, because of the pandemic, medyo hindi, syempre, the traffic is less. But hearing the strategy that you have in mind, I think we will bounce back
I think
better.
so too.
No? One question na gusto namin itanong, sir. From a viewer, she asked, what business principles from the C family that you considered essential as to how you fight this pandemic? So, ang lalim magandang tanong.
Okay. Well, as I mentioned, we focused extensively on our cash position. We review our cash on a daily basis. we'd anticipate how much cash we should have this day depending on our receivables, and we make sure that na-achieve yun. Kasi kunyari nag-slide, then we find out we invest a lot on manpower. We invest on we get the right people. We invest a lot on training because we need to have the right people to get us through not only in the regular day-to-day business, but especially in times of a crisis. And then another thing about the group is that they're very agile. They can shift their strategy in very short notice because they have a very thin management layer. The decisions on top, they're very hands-on. They know how to change. So versatility and
It's
agility is very important.
Very important, especially this time of pandemic, sir,
Yes,
no?
very much so.
Okay. Another question. As you said, sir, the people in your business are the right people who most likely fit your company. How do you motivate them to strive harder and double their efforts in times like this?
When we chose our people, I mentioned that you get the right people, you don't have to motivate them anymore. They're
Yeah.
self-motivated. So we were very fortunate. The direction from doesn't all have to come from
Sa
the
taas,
top.
no?
They have their own ideas and they throw in their ideas and they pull their own weight and they make sure that because there's passion for the business and love for the company, so you don't really have to motivate the people. As long as you get the right people, you don't have to worry about too much about motivation. But then at the end of at the end of the year, you also have to motivate them with money.
Hindi pwede mawala yun, sir. Ano?
So
Especially now, in times of
the
pandemic. No?
performance you have to reward.
Ang daming key learnings that you mentioned earlier, sir, about the strategy. And it's very helpful for small businesses like us na meron kaming business entity na tinitignan, like SMDC, who's pioneering a lot of, kasi yung for example, yung Shell lang, no? Yan yung nag-pioneer ng ganong klaseng development. Maliliit yung cut ng unit, pero in terms of the amenities, napakaganda. When you mentioned about the new development, yung mga product innovation to launch, meron na namang aasahan ngayon ng market, no? So, upon recovery. Another question, sir. This is a very light question, I think, but it's very inspirational. Can you give some encouraging words to people who are trying to make it through these tough times?
I think this crisis is not only affecting the Philippines, it's affecting the world. It's actually historic. But like the world's been through a lot of very difficult crises, like wars and even other pandemics, the depression. Like everything else, it's going to be over. So you just have to survive. Look at the tips that I mentioned. You have to survive. You have to have hope. You just have to like buckle down and fight it out.
Fight it out.
In time, it will
We
pass.
will recover, sir.
I definitely.
Definitely. Maraming salamat, sir.
Thank you very much.
JCI, okay, sige, pwede pa raw tayo. We are allowed to ask more question. Sabi niyo yan, ako, kasi gusto-gusto ko makipagkwentuhan pa kay sir dahil since Mr. Banson is part of SM Group, marami akong gustong itanong. I would like to thank, actually, sir, the SM Group for extending a lot of help sa aming mga lesson nila because I operated around a couple of numbers of restaurants with SM, and SM is one of the, actually they're the first. You are the first to give us support. Maraming amelioration na binigay sa amin agad. Rental, mga discount, until, in-stretch na until end of this year. So it's a call of attention to sa other malls na please do the same.
So relationship is very important to the SM group.
Yes,
diba?
yes.
We're all in this together.
Yes,
This crisis, we're all affected. So kailangan magtulungan,
Yes.
diba? So that we understand the situation of our business partners.
Yes.
So we help each other out.
I must comment, sir, no? When Steven Tan, the president of the mall group naman, he reaches to us personally. And then right now, with other organizations that we form, yung Resto PH, with other restaurant players, we were able to form a collaboration and a battle cry to help the economy to bounce back. So another question, hanap tayo ng question. O baka may tanong kayo dyan ha, yung mga nasa online, ang dami nyo na, nasa around, doon sa isang page, around 1,000 plus ang live na nanonood ngayon. So, malay nyo, bigyan kayo ng isang kondo ni Sir pag nagtanong kayo. Another question, how were you able to review your business to see if they can proceed to the new normal? What are the steps you took to make your company adapt to the new way of business? Na-discuss ni Sir kanina, baka mayroon ng additional si Sir.
Oh, that's why. Important thing is to look at the trend. Kailangan,
Trend, no?
you should have your pulse on the market and see how people think, how people, di ba, yung situation nila, and then you do the necessary adjustment in your business plan. Like I said, what you used to do before may not necessarily apply anymore going forward.
Yes.
Kasi iba na eh. Like, I gave the example of yung online shopping. Di ba? You need to adapt or you die.
Yes.
Di ba? Look at all the malls in the States.
Yes.
Maraming malls yun nagsasara.
They decided to close instead.
Di sila maka-adapt eh. So, learning from their experience, at least, may nakita natin nangyayari yun. So, we're able to adapt here. Like I mentioned, the SM group is very agile. Very easy for us to adapt. And we're very much on the ground, understanding what's happening in the market.
Sir, yung kanina kinuwento mo sa amin about yung cinema, yung drive-in cinema.
Yes.
So sa mall, nung napanood ko yon once in the news, in SM Pampanga, meron din kasi akong branch doon. Sabi ko, that's a very good pivot for the mall kasi na-repurpose niya agad eh. Yung laki ng parking niya. Sa side naman ng condo development, ano yung naiisip niyo, sir, aside from introducing new product online, na pwedeng ganun din ang impact sa amin na sasabihin ng customer, that's a very new idea. Meron na bang ganun na idea na naiisip o kailangan i-hold muna baka kasi makopya?
May mga secret.
May mga secret weapon ba? No?
Pero yung very important shift that we did was to create a product that is, kasi kailangan sensitive tayo sa cash flow ng mga tao ngayon. Maraming even mga OFWs. Actually, international sales account for up to 70% of our total sales now.
70%.
And many of these people have either lost their jobs or nag-pay cut.
Yes.
So we had to introduce that low price product.
Wow.
The one that I mentioned. Kasi, di ba? Siyempre, gusto pa rin nila magkabahay.
Pero you mentioned about the year-to-year comparison of the sales. It is better this year, no? Wow.
The thing is that we were prepared for the lockdown.
Wow.
So,
Yes.
for 3 months,
Yes.
walang business. If you're not prepared, talagang
You will suffer a lot, no?
I think many developers stopped selling altogether. Kami, we were.
But in your case,
we saw it.
you know?
That's a good thing about having the right manpower, because you can huddle. We spent a whole day discussing right before the lockdown. Actually, on the Monday, the lockdown was Tuesday.
Yes.
Monday, we had all of the senior executives sa SNDC, and we came up with scenarios. Scenario A, B, C.
Wow.
Kasi we didn't know we didn't know
How long would it
baka
take?
sabihin 50% close lang, sasara yung public traffic. The government wasn't really very sure yet what to do until, so we had the scenario. First case scenario was total down, which was our plan C.
Wow.
It turned out yung pala
Ang plan,
So, since we had spent the whole day planning ABC, nung nag-announce ng lockdown, sinabi lang, plan C, and everybody was on board. Everybody knew what they were supposed to do. We sent the laptops home. We connected them to the system. The rule namin is the three things that you should be ready for. You should do in this situation is kailangan preparation.
So you have to prepare.
So you really have to be ready. Otherwise, you get caught flat-footed. It could mean the survival of it could cost you the survival of your company.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Banson. A lot of insight. We really wanted to push more questions, but unfortunately, alam ko, nag-cookie na sila sa akin. We have to move to another speaker. But before that, we would like to give the certificate of appreciation to The certificate of appreciation, tatayo kami, tinatatayo kami. uh, certificate of appreciation is given to Mr. Jose Marie Banson for imparting his valuable insights and inspiration to our community during the JCIdeas Outlook on Resiliency Beyond the New Normal, given this 28th day of August 2020 at Mike Hotel, Mall of Asia, in their property, signed by National Chair Lawrence B. Tan, of course, with our National President of JCI Philippines, Mr. Mark Joseph David. Sir?
Thank you. Thank you.
Titingin pa kami dyan. Okay? Salamat po.
Salamat.
I'm so proud. Kilala
In line with JCI's mission to provide development opportunities that empower young people to create positive change, opportunities for members such as the skills development courses are offered to allow them to discover or develop skills. These courses enable members to fulfill their duties in becoming exceptional young active citizens. These courses are taught by experienced certified JCI trainers, and each course is designed to highlight a specific ability, which can be applied later on along other course teachings. New members are required to take JCI Achieve, which teaches the principles of the JCI organization, to be followed by the JCI Impact, which focuses on creating highly impactful and sustainable projects for the community through proper research, planning, and collaboration. Members who are interested in pursuing leadership positions in their local organization are encouraged to take JCI Admin. This teaches how one can manage the affairs of their chapter as well as the members' responsibilities outside of JCI. In order to fulfill your role in the organization, JCI offers a course on project management, which focuses on efficient planning, executing, and evaluating of projects. For a project to be recognized and approved, one should be able to present their ideas clearly and effectively to fellow members and stakeholders. The presenter course teaches delivery methods, visual aids, and other presentation skills that will help convey the message and goals of your project. In relation to your organization's objective, the social responsibility course creates awareness that each member has responsibility to their community and environment in whatever projects or endeavors they pursue. To be able to continue with your project's mission, you will need people who can work and collaborate with. For this to be possible, one must learn how to make meaningful connections and lasting professional relationships. The networking course teaches members how to be able to build these connections and create meaningful relationships with them. As your project becomes successful and potentially turn into an organization, you'll need to be able to conduct effective meetings. Effective meetings then teaches what type of meeting is more effective for the members depending on their roles in the organization. One must become an effective leader in order to be able to drive members of an organization to a common goal. Effective leadership intends to provide a foundation on which individuals can build their capacity and character to motivate others to take action for common purpose. An effective leader must be able to effectively communicate his or her objectives. This is why JCI also offers the following effective communication courses: Building Foundation, Crafting Your Message, Message Delivery, Mastering Management. The core of JCI is to be able to share our knowledge and skills for the betterment of all members of society, which is why the Facilitator course aims for participants to learn best practices of effective facilitation and be able to conduct group exercises and effective learning. JCI members are encouraged to take advantage of these opportunities, since these courses are usually more costly or less accessible if taken through other organizations. So what are you waiting for? Take part in these exciting personal development opportunities now. Call your local training director or visit JCI at www.jci.cc to learn more.
Hello everyone, I am Mark Joseph David, the National President of JCI Philippines. And on behalf of our organization, I would like to say thank you to all our frontliners in this fight against COVID-19. From the doctors to the nurses, to the policemen down to the barangay tanods, to the garbage collectors, and the people working in the marketplace and also in the groceries, to our security guards and maintenance people, everyone who are working now to provide us with some semblance of normalcy, the people from the banks, telecommunication, internet, TV provider, cable, food delivery, everyone working during this crisis. Our deepest appreciation and gratitude to all of you for being out there for us. Our prayers for the success of our leaders in government. May you find the wisdom and strength you need to fight this virus. May you be a symbol of unity and perseverance during these very trying times. Now is the time to show what leadership is all about. Now is the time to show them what genuine public service is all about. You are needed most during these times. And we pray for your success, and we are in it together with you. Our appreciation to everyone who have helped and supported our national programs activated during this pandemic, Oplan Kaagapay and Gathart. Same appreciation is given to everyone who have supported our local organization implement these programs. You have helped us fill the gap needed to fight this virus, and we are forever grateful to all of you. This pandemic, as scary as it is, will not put us down. We will always find a way to move forward and keep moving forward and survive. Someone said that all we need is hope and strength. Hope that everything will be better, and the strength to hold on until it does. For those at home, please stay at home. Help us stop the spread of this virus and help us bring our frontliners back to their own homes. To my fellow JCI members, allow me to thank you for all your support to the national programs of JCI Philippines. Continue to be active citizens and at the same time ensuring your safety. I am forever grateful for all your efforts during this time and very proud to be your national president. You have brought this organization to the highest of levels, and your sacrifices and courage during this pandemic will never be forgotten by the people you've touched and the people you've helped. Charles Spurgeon said, "Hope itself is like a star, not to be seen in the sunshine of prosperity and only to be discovered in the night of adversity." Hope is what keeps us moving forward. Hope will keep us fighting, and hope will provide us with the strength to finish this through. You know, we are all in some way frontliners, whether you are in the hospitals or at the checkpoints, manning the grocery stores or collecting garbage, or doing like what we are doing in JCI, or even staying at home. We are all in this together, and we should be in this together. So let us be united in this fight and win together. I wish you all the best, my fellow countrymen, my fellow JCI members, and I hope and pray that everything will be over soon. And I hope that we can come out better individuals after this big crisis in our lives. Maraming salamat po at magandang gabi po sa inyong lahat. Stay safe, stay at home, and be responsible.
Human civilization has been advancing at a very rapid rate. From the invention of the wheel to rocket technology that brought the first man on the moon, human progress is indeed marvelous. Unfortunately, despite all our advancements in technology, philosophy, and governance, we are still plagued with global issues such as poverty and inequality, environmental degradation, human violence, and abuse. That is why in September 2015, more than 150 world leaders met at the United Nations headquarters in New York to discuss and adopt a sustainable development agenda that will pave the way to a sustainable future. On January 1st, 2016, the 17 UN Sustainable Development Goals, or UN SDG, have been launched. These goals will affect all of the countries in the world with the aim to end all forms of poverty, fight inequalities, and tackle climate change while ensuring that no one is left behind. The 17 UN SDGs are: Goal 1, no poverty. Goal 2, zero hunger. Goal 3, good health and well-being for people. Goal 4, quality education. Goal 5, gender equality. Goal 6, clean water and sanitation. Goal 7, affordable and clean energy. Goal 8, decent work and economic growth. Goal 9, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Goal 10, reducing inequalities. Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. Goal 12, responsible consumption and production. Goal 13, climate action. Goal 14, life below water. Goal 15, life on land. Goal 16, peace, justice, and strong institutions. Goal 17, partnerships for the goals. These goals will guide all governments, NGOs, and communities over the next 15 years, hoping to create a sustainable world for all by the year 2030. It is our responsibility to build a bright and sustainable future for our children and our planet. Let us act now. Share this video and educate your friends on the UN SDGs. Become a world citizen now.
Hi, welcome back to JCIdeas. And for our third speaker this morning, she received a Bachelor of Laws from Ateneo de Manila University and a BS from De La Salle University. She also earned a Master of Laws in International Comparative Law from Georgetown University in the US. She is the former commissioner for the Bureau of Internal Revenue from 2010 to 2016, where she oversaw assessment and collection of all national internal revenue taxes and represented the country at the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development Global Forum for Transparency in Taxation in the year 2014. She was given a nickname, One Tough Chick, where she fearlessly served the country with integrity and dedication. Please help me welcome Ms. Kim Jacinto Henares.
Good morning, everyone. And I'd like to congratulate the JC for being able to organize this kind of a conference despite what's happening all around us. And before I start, actually what they gave me, the topic they wanted to talk about is future bound on financials, government, and private sector. But before I start, I think I want to say something more practical that would apply to everyone. I know everyone is so frustrated, so stressed out for being in because of all this pandemic, no? But maybe we should think of it in another way, no? We should take this pandemic as an opportunity for us to really evaluate our life and to determine what is really important. And I think the pandemic has basically brought everyone back to where to the basic, no? Which is family and exploring their time together and with their relationship with their God. No? I'm a Christian, but other people have other gods. No? So this pandemic has basically helped us to go back to the very basic and to the most important things in life, our relationship with the higher being, our God, and our relationship with our family, and our relationship with our friends and our community. Because for the past years, because of all the economic development, we have basically been running, I think, a race, a sprint that we forgot everything else. All of us were so occupied in catching that prize, which is to our mind is materialistic success. No? So this pandemic has basically showed us that materialism is not the most important thing because it basically can disappear at a click of a finger. So if we look at it that way, then we won't be too stressed out and we would be able to look at things and evaluate it properly and determine what it is we want out of life. And I think having a simple life has a lot of benefit. No? This pandemic showed a simple life is actually a better life than the complicated life that we have been going through in the past years because of the economic development. Having said that, I think that's where I think everyone should be before they evaluate what they should be doing forward about their finances, about their business. So first, I'd like to talk about financials. I think it's important. The other day, I was just reading in the newspaper that says, to the surprise of everyone, a lot of people who pawned their things to the pawn shop has basically redeemed it. No? So it means that they have been trying to pay down their debt, which is a good thing. And I think the other good thing in this pandemic is that because for those who still have income and who has cash, it has basically put them in a better position because they don't spend on unnecessary things, right? Because they cannot go to watch a movie, they cannot go out and eat, they cannot travel, they have more cash on hand. And using that, we should take this opportunity to pay down our debt. No? The other thing that I heard from the bank is that savings has increased. So that means more people, if they have the money, they save because what's the reason? Because they have nowhere to spend it on, right? So we should take that opportunity where our life is simpler and we don't have to keep on spending on unnecessary things to put it in a proper perspective. No? So my advice to everyone at this point, it's the saying is cash is king, right? If you have cash and there's an opportunity, you would be able to take advantage of the opportunity. Because what's happening is basically a lot of people who probably borrowed money to buy real property, to buy cars, to buy things on installment, would most probably, because of what's happening, not be able to pay down. So a lot of foreclosure will happen. And I think it will also taper the increase of all the values of real property, cars, and everything. So it will give opportunity for those people who were able to save previously to buy things at a more reasonable price. No? So for those who still have jobs and their business are still going on, I think this is a time that you can go back to what is the real, a prudent way of handling your finances. What's the prudent way of handling your finances? First, I think if you have a debt, you should make sure that you're slowly paying down the debt, because you don't really know, although the BSP has been slashing interest rate and the foreign exchange, dollar versus peso, the peso has strengthened. But you don't know whether this will continue or not, no? Because logically, you cannot see a reason why the peso should strengthen against the dollar, given that OFW remittances are down, right? And second, maybe now it's like that because the government borrowed so much dollar, right? So our gross internal revenue, our reserve is high, no? 100 billion dollar, right? But those are debt. Eventually, we have to pay it off. So when now there's an oversupply of dollar, but eventually there will be a need for more dollar because those maturity will arise. No? Then the other thing that might strengthen the dollar is if Biden wins, that could also strengthen the dollar. No? So I guess the thing there is if you have dollar, you have to weigh it. No? If you have peso revenue, I wouldn't advise you to borrow dollar because eventually gambling on a foreign exchange is like gambling in the casino. You can actually lose more. No? Whereas if you have a peso revenue, it's better to have a peso liability because you don't have to deal with foreign exchange risk. And foreign exchange risk is better left to sophisticated investor, no? Or sophisticated banker. No? And I hope the bankers don't take this against me, but bankers and investment managers always like you to buy. I mean, if you have a peso debt, they will always try to make you go through several arrangements. So because every arrangement has a fee, right? So personally, I don't advise a company that has a peso revenue to get a foreign exchange debt. You're just giving the financial market more opportunity to make money out of you. So that's basically what you should do financial wise. And secondly, I think for every peso you get, you should set aside already the amount that you need to pay for something, no? So that you know how much is it that you really can spend. Now, do not think that the peso you have is everything that you can spend, no? Because you have to set aside probably 10% as your emergency money because you don't know what will happen in this pandemic. No? You might suddenly need funds for your medical health, no? For medical fees. So it's better to set aside a certain amount. Benchmark is at least not less than 10% of your whatever cash flow you get. No? Then the other thing is set aside money that you have obligations that you know that you have to pay. No? Since I used to be the PIR commissioner, I think one thing is taxes. No? So when you get it, you set it aside already. And then, of course, payment of liability. No? And then the other thing is setting aside for a certain sum. If you read the Bible, it's 10%, no? That you would use to help people, to help in God's service or God's work. No? Then whatever is left with you, that's basically, so your mind is clear that this is the amount I can spend. So you won't be tempted to spend more than what you earn. So I think that's the nice thing also about the pandemic. We're back to the basic. which sometimes we forget, no? Because when in the past, we always say, oh, we're going to make a lot of money naman so I can borrow today. But this pandemic shows us that life is so uncertain, no? So back to the basic, which is prudent management of your finances. Then for government, I think this pandemic is an opportunity for government, no? To change mindset and to change how government work. No? This pandemic, one of the things that's nice about this pandemic is we're talking about digitalization. You know, the digitalization project of government has been there since the 90s. But unfortunately, it never pushes through because first, I think to be honest, people in government doesn't want things to be digitalized because it forecloses them from earning an amount that is not due them. Okay, I think that's a nicer way to say it. That's not due them. No. Secondly, they don't really like digitalization because it becomes transparent. No, if the management want to really evaluate performance, there's a way of evaluating it because they have the data at the tip of their hand, and they can just write a program to basically let the computer come up with the KPI, no? And the proper evaluation of people. And third, it's easier to detect fraud, no? If everything is computerized. But at the end of the day, like what's happening to PhilHealth, you cannot depend on the computer alone. No? You have to use common sense also, no? Because even if you have the computer still needs you to put in parameters by which it can detect what's going on. No? So if you don't do that first, you have to be able to evaluate what kind of data you need. No? Because too much data is also not good. No? It's hard, it's a hard work and a obstacle to doing business for those who want to invest. No? Why do you need data that you don't really require? It makes, instead of just putting in 3 data field, you want 100. So the business, instead of taking care of business, is really just trying to comply with government requirement. No? So that's one thing. The digitalization also is an opportunity for government to really sit down and determine what it is that it needs. Because it cannot also ask for too much that it does not need because it has to pay for server space, right? The more data they require, the more gigabytes they will require. And the more gigabyte you require, the more data storage you will require, and the more you have to pay. So it also is a way for government to really go sit down and determine what is required and just to demand what is required of everyone. No? And digitalization is also a way to determine, to also make sure that, let's say, the benefit you give to somebody gets to him, directly, that it does not have to go through somebody else. No? Like yesterday, I was listening to a program, no? And they were saying, the Secretary of Labor said that the Bayanihan 2 has this second tranche of giving out 5,000 peso for the unemployed, for those who lost their employment. And the question was, how do you give it to them? That should not be a question under digitalization, no? Because under digitalization, you will be able to have the capacity to know who these people are, and to also the capacity to send the benefit directly to them. So, and then the capacity to really determine that they got it. So those are the things that that digitalization will bring to the table. No? In fact, it's because of lack of digitalization that there's really no plan that's going on about this COVID-19, right? Because nobody really knows what's happening and nobody really knows the right data, right? And so we don't really have a plan, right? And because we don't have a plan, business is also confused. Not only business, but the citizenry is confused. No? And I think the pandemic also tend to show competence, right? Whether, when there's no pandemic, if you're incompetent, I don't think it matters. Because everyone does not feel anything, is not impacted. But when there's a pandemic or a calamity or disaster, that's when competence really is important and comes to the fore. No? So I believe the government has a lot of, when they set up an office, they put a lot of requirement, no? Qualifications of who will hold the office, what is the expectations of that office, what is the requirement. No? I think it's all there. I don't think there's a need to pass any new law. It's just a matter of government implementing what is written in the law. So this pandemic is also an opportunity for government to probably go back to the basic and look at the law and ask themselves, have they implemented it? And this pandemic also is an opportunity for government to rethink the mindset. No? What do I mean by rethinking the mindset? I've been in government, and if you look at the way government write a law and implement a law and monitor people, the basis of everything is on the presumption that everyone will violate. And that because everyone will violate, I have to put all the requirements strictly before I give an approval. But if we look at our country, we have been doing that for what? 60 years? 70 years? And it has not brought us anywhere. No? Basically, what people who are voluntarily complying and who want to comply are suffering because of people who don't comply. Because our law and the way we implement it is geared toward the concept that everyone will not comply if I am not strict. That's also one of the reasons why, if you look at the Southeast Asia and ASEAN, we're not doing well in attracting investment. No? And when I say investment, for me, I don't really am so much emphasizing on foreign investment. Investment can be domestic. No? I think it's better if it's domestic because at least it benefits directly the citizen. No? But nobody is really investing. Why? Because it's so difficult to comply, right? I think this is an opportunity to probably change the mindset and say to business, okay, my first presumption is all of you are willing to comply. So all of you can start. This is the minimum requirement for starting a business. No? And then when you start, after 1 year, I will come back and I'll give you all the other requirements. And after 1 year, I'll come back and check on you whether you complied with it or not. And I would believe that if we have that kind of attitude or direction, because once the business has already started, they have invested a lot of money in it. I'm sure they will force themselves to comply because otherwise they will lose all the investment they made. No? So it's also one, if we're going to try to get out of this economic doldrum, I think we should have a change of mindset. And the other thing is, with what's happening, there's two competing requirements. Government needs money to provide for especially the poor, the health, the education, and all the things. But the economy, and to jumpstart the economy, right? So it said, I have to tax people, right? But if you tax people too much, the economy won't start. So there's two counterintuitive objective. No? So I think the government should look at their function and their finances and determine what it is that they can let the private sector do. It's just for government to do the planning and let the private sector do the investment. What am I talking about? I mean, like first now, infrastructure, right? I don't think government will have enough money to do infrastructure. And I don't think we should keep on borrowing because at the end of the day, we have to pay that off, right? If government has a definitive plan, what it can do is tell back to PPP, public-private partnership, and let the private sector invest in it, right? So we were building the same infrastructure without government fund, right? So that you free some of the government fund to do things that's really what the government is supposed to do, help the less fortunate member of our society. So that's one thing. And the other thing is, it is back to digitalization, it's an opportunity for government to determine what are the functions that you don't need to do because you have digitalization. And you can have a leaner government so that you spend less on your budget is not on things that are not productive. You spend on things that are more productive. No? And if you encourage the private sector, I'm sure they will require a lot of employee. No? So the government employees will let's no longer hire, right? Or if we hire, it's just a replacement. Don't make the government bigger than what it should be, no? Because government should really just be supportive and let the private sector grow. A private sector driven growth is much more lasting and it makes government more focused on what government should be doing, no? Rather than spreading itself like a shotgun and not achieving anything. No? So that's what basically I think government should be doing. And the other good point about this pandemic is the distance learning. Because it is, if we look at distance learning and it is done properly, it's a way to elevate the standard of the public school. Because you have the same curriculum, you have the same book, you have the same webinar, you have the same video that's also targeted to the private school students. So it will elevate the standard of public school to private school. And it's an equalizer also, no? Because then, whether you're private school, public school, you're being educated in the same standard. No? So for the basic curriculum. Now, for those in the private school, if their mother, father, or their parents has more money and they want to have more elective courses, then it's up to them. Diba? Then the other benefit of this, if we do it properly, is that the out-of-school youth, they don't have to be out of school anymore, right? Because they can actually study anytime they want. It's just whether they want to learn or not. That one we cannot teach our children. Even in private school, diba? Our children, we cannot force them to learn. They have to want to learn. So learning is not an economic issue anymore, right? So those are the things this pandemic has basically also benefited if we do things properly and we take advantage of the opportunity. Now, for the private sector, the other thing about government, I think this is also an opportunity to decongest urban center. No? Because it seems like with the pandemic, people now think that it's better to go back to the province. Because at least when you go back to the province, they have land in the province. No? They will not go hungry. Unlike here, if they don't have work, they will go hungry, right? So we hear a lot of people who want to go back to the province. If the government does this properly, no? The health protocol, the assistance they will give to all these people who's going back to their province so that they go back to be more productive, it will also benefit and decongest the urban center and make and help in our food production, because I think our food production is going down because everything is being made into a subdivision, right? So this is an opportunity to go back to their provinces, and most of them have land. It's just that they don't want to till the land. Now is a good time to try to convince them that, rather than staying in the urban center where you go hungry, why don't we go back to the province where you are, at least you won't get hungry. If you're masipag, there's always food, right? You plant something, it will grow. Diba? So these are opportunities that can be taken advantage of. But we have to sit down and really plan it, right? So that's as far as government is concerned. The private sector, uh, like I said, there's so much rethinking. I think the problem with the private sector, this is going to be the rich, the luxury item, I think is a business that will stay. But a few people, if you are successful, then that's fine. No, I always say in business, the hardest business to deal with is the middle. The the low price and the high end price are easier to do business in. It's the middle that's the middle in the higher price, and when I say higher price, these are luxury with snob appeal. It's, you know, I think marketing to the ego of people is easier. Diba? It's even up to now, the pandemic, you see in the Instagram, what do? They still post their clothes, their bags, their cars. There's still people selling cars, and the cars being sold are not the middle, it's the high end, right? So those already in the high end, I think they will continue, uh, especially in the Philippines. I think it will be better because nobody can travel. Because the high end, their competition is people traveling abroad and buying things abroad. But since they cannot travel, they will probably buy things here. So that one, I think, is properly addressed unless the brand itself closes, no? Because globally, they're affected by this pandemic. Now, for the middle, that's where all these problems arise. No? I think for the middle market, it is more how will you have to find a niche, you have to find a need, and you have to determine what is the present need of people now with the pandemic, because the need of the people pre-pandemic is different from the need of people now. Before, people spend left and right without thinking. Now people are more judicious about spending, determining what they should and should not spend. So it's determining what are the needs of the people and trying to address that. And secondly, marketing it properly, and the logistic side uh, of informing people that this is a product, and logistics side of actually selling it to them and bringing the goods to them. Because I think brick and mortar is going to be very difficult. Even if government said that we cannot be in quarantine forever because of the economy, I think the experience is people who have purchasing power are not really going back to the malls. Right? The only one who really goes out are those who goes to the market, right? The palengke, not so much the supermarket. Right? Even now, you look at the supermarket, there's really no line anymore, right? The line in the supermarket before was because of panic, right? So I think those are the things. And the other thing is basically why people are not going out, because it has been replaced by people doing business in the community. Because there's so many people staying in the house. An anecdote is, the sale of KitchenAid mixer is selling very well. Why? Because everyone's baking in their house. So the market now is, and I believe every community has a chat group that tells people, these are what I'm selling, it's available this day, how much, private message me to order, diba? So that's what's replacing the retail store. No? So that's one thing. It also gives opportunity for entrepreneurship. Maybe this is a time to experiment on what you can sell and prepare for when people get over this fear of this pandemic, or when we find a cure or a vaccine. Personally, I think a cure is much more important than the vaccine, because we are not sure whether there is an immunity from this virus. Diba? But it doesn't matter if there's an immunity or not, if there's a cure. Diba? So until that happens, I think there's an opportunity for people to take advantage of their entrepreneurship and experiment what it is that they can do well and sell. Diba? Because it's another thing to think that I want to do this, but if you don't know how to do it, then it does not matter, right? Because you'll see that there's a market for bread, but you want to go into that bread market, but you don't know how to bake, diba? Or you don't know where to source the bread. So this is also a way for you to determine whether what kind of product are things that you will be able to do efficiently and effectively. And then the other things that the private sector, those are small, medium enterprise that I'm discussing about. No? But for the bigger, I think the bigger business will be if you can manufacture vaccines. But that requires a huge capital. No? The other is how there's a problem, no? Even in this about contactless market. The problem is most of the people have cash, right? And then you order COD, then you give the courier the cash. I was told that, when you make this arrangement, it is more expensive for the seller because there's a bigger commission that is being charged because they're handling cash, and fewer courier has that capacity or wants to do that. So the puzzle behind this is if I'm the buyer, how somebody has to break this puzzle. No? How will somebody pay COD without giving cash? So how do you put cash to a wallet or to an account? And then when somebody delivers it, you transfer the money. When he's there, you transfer the money so that he can give you the product. I mean, that's another opportunity. If somebody can solve that problem, I think it's going to make a lot of money. Right? So that's the other opportunity that's there. And for the banks, the other opportunity is to have an end-to-end digital bank. No? And I think the BSP is coming up with a regulation on digitalization. So basically, there's a lot of opportunity if we just look for it. And if we don't just surrender to the seeming stress that this pandemic is bringing to everyone. No? This is the right time to evaluate and determine what business and what opportunity is there for us and take advantage of it. Thank you. That's all.
for a short Q&A. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Kim, for the very insightful presentation. To go on your we will invite Ms. Natas for a short interview. Good afternoon, Ms. Kim Natas. The presentation is very insightful. Marami po kami na nabot na it's not anymore economic issue. Diba? Maganda yung binanggit nyo kanina. Also, you mentioned about decongesting the urban areas. Middle price is very difficult to play dahil maraming competition. Dahil sa very insightful presentation, ang daming tuloy bumabati sa inyo, ma'am, doon sa aming Facebook Live. Napakami, ma'am. We have 157 shares as of this moment, and we have a live viewing audience at around 1,475 sa isang page pa lang. So I think, ma'am, this is a very momentous to sa JCI. Dahil I think we have a round of applause for that. Hindi ko na po masundan yung mga messages na pumapasok. But I have to read some questions. Sobra ang online, ma'am. Ma'am Kim, sobra. Oh, sige. Saks saksakan lang daw ako, ma'am, ng...
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10.
Very insightful, ma'am. Kyang, itodo nyo na yung tanong. Nandito na si Ma'am Kim. Good morning once again. We are now back live for our Q&A. For the first question, this is very exciting question. I think many would agree to me. This current pandemic has driven or even forced citizens to think a way to generate income. Hence, most, if not all, have resorted to offering goods and services through means on online transaction and contactless selling. From a former BIR commissioner's perspective, what are your thoughts on the government's initiative to tax online small businesses? What is your stand on this issue that appalled the public, lamenting that this is additional burden for them?
Okay. Uh, Actually, I was the one who issued the revenue memorandum in 2013 addressing online selling. No? At that time, I issued that revenue memorandum because the brick and mortar store are complaining that why are we taxing them and not taxing those
That's
who are
more.
selling online. So I wrote, we issued that memorandum order basically saying that whether you sell in a brick and mortar store or you sell in a virtual store, that it's still the same thing. It's selling. And therefore, you are engaged in business, and therefore, you have to comply with what the law requires, which is you have to register, you have to issue receipt, you have to report income. And if you have income, after deducting all the expenses, you have to pay the taxes, right? That's the requirement in the law. So as a government institution, BIR has to implement the law. With this pandemic, and the other thing is, if you don't comply with that, what I'm saying, okay, go back. The Bureau of Internal Revenue has only 10,000 people, and we cannot guard everyone. So these are rules that we set out that needs people to voluntarily comply. As far as the BIR are concerned, we're using the Pareto principle, wherein we monitor first the
20%.
sector that contribute 80%. No? Then after we're able to monitor that, then we go down to probably the 20%. That's how we work. No? Secondly, the thing there is if you don't comply, you will never grow big
Grow, yes.
because you will only be able to supply your neighbors.
Very limited.
You cannot sell to corporate, you cannot sell to businesses because they will require you to issue a receipt because they have to deduct it as an expense. Then lastly, the Bureau of Internal Revenue is implementing the law. So we cannot tell you
Not to
something that is violative of the law. We're telling you what the law says
Yes.
and please comply. And you take the risk for not complying. At the same time, there's a commonsensical reason why you have to comply if you want to grow big. But if you're not ambitious and you just want that to be small, then that's your decision.
I think it answers it all. Um, for our next question, marami talagang pumapasok. We cannot accommodate all questions, but this is the second question, Ms. Kim. How can the private sector or who can help the private sector push for digitalization of the government when we all know that we have the capacity and means to do it, which in turn will help straighten what's been crooked for a long time?
Well, the private sector have to determine first. Um, like I said, government has to first determine what they need. It cannot be driven by the private sector.
Yes.
No. It's like what happened before, diba, with our roads. Diba? There has to be a master plan. Otherwise, the roads will be crisscrossing and roads will be built that's not needed, right? Government has to have a master plan and say, these are what it's
We need,
needed because it will interconnect to each other.
Yeah.
It's not a standalone. No? Secondly, you have to know that government has to deal with the procurement law of the Philippines. It cannot, even if they want uh, to do it with private sector, no, there's a procurement law that happens, right, that we have to comply. And third, computerization is not that simple because now we have the data privacy law.
Yes.
Diba? There are things that are confidential, no? So they cannot just do that, no? But the private sector can do things that will, especially now with the way the IT is working, there's a lot of middleware, diba? You can do a lot of things on the private sector side to link and then just submit it or link it with whatever the government needs submitted. Diba? So that way, you are still helping government digitalize because now they don't have to encode,
Yes.
right? Without tinkering with their IT system. No? So in that sense, private sector can help in the digitalization. No? You don't really have to wait for government to the digitalization will happen outside diba, the private
Or the
sector
private
side
sector side.
rather than on the government
Yeah.
side. And
Until
most
it meets.
yeah, because most of the time the government has an IT infrastructure.
Yes, yes.
But the problem there is how, diba, like when you're reporting, you have to file a report. How do you file it electronically?
Yes.
So you can actually do the first part, diba, computerize that, and talk to the government and say, I won't bother with your IT internal. No? Just
Give
if
us
I
the-
can if you can give me an API
Yes, yes.
so that I can just send all these things to you electronically and you don't have to re-encode it.
Yes.
So those are things that the private sector can do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another question. This is from the chat group also. Uh, what is your simple financial formula that you can impart to Filipino families in times of pandemic for us to survive? Aside from mentioning about cash is king, setting aside 10% emergency money, and going back to basic.
Well, for you to survive, I
Yes,
think I read
simple financial formula.
actually the first and foremost formula first is simplifying your life.
Simplifying. Yeah.
Yeah, like for example, now you have four maids. Do you need four maids?
No.
Diba? Because you're all at home. Maybe this is the opportunity to teach your children to wash their own plate, to make their own bed. Diba? So Diba? You,
Very basic.
your standard of living, you have to make it more realistic. Diba? Kasi you don't need that many maid anymore, diba? Because all of you are there. You can actually do some of the work, right?
So that's it.
Diba?
Very-
Those other things, right? So the other things is maybe you have 10 phones, you can make it into one phone na lang. So it starts with that,
Yes,
and
yes.
determining what is the basic and what's the essential, diba? So that you determine how much you need. And then based on that, then you do a financial planning, diba? But
Yes.
unless you do that, you don't know really how much is it that you need, right?
Yes, yes. So, very insightful discussion, but we have to, marami na namang sumesenya sa akin na gusto ko pa sanang magtanong, but we have so limited time this evening to award, of course, the appreciation on, ano? Okay. Sinesenya sa kaming tumayo uli. The certificate of appreciation is given to Ms. Kim Henares for imparting her valuable insights and inspiration to our community during the JCIdeas Outlook on Resiliency Beyond New Normal, given this 28th day of August 2020 at Microtel in Mall of Asia, signed by our National Chair, Lawrence D. Tan, and National President of JCI Philippines, Mark Joseph. Ma'am, places po. Maraming salamat. Interview. Oo nga, baka ano kami nasa social media.